Imagine you're moments away from a long-awaited trip, your carry-on carefully packed, boarding pass printed, excitement thrumming in your veins, only to be singled out, scrutinized, and accused of carrying a fake ID. This is the harrowing ordeal Mina Martin faces at Washington Dulles International Airport. The unthinkable humiliation grows tenfold when she's forced into an interrogation by TSA agents determined to prove she's guilty. But what they don't realize is that Mina's husband is a powerful United States senator, and his sudden involvement shifts the entire balance of power. Prepare yourself for an unforgettable ride of twists, drama, and a karmic reckoning. Mina Martin scrolled through her phone as her taxi zipped along the highway, heading for Washington Dulles International Airport. She was anxious but excited. This trip to Atlanta was both personal and professional. She was set to be a keynote speaker at a major legal conference, an opportunity she had worked tirelessly to secure. The awards, the accolades, the respect from peers, it all culminated in this moment. Yet Mina wasn't just any lawyer. She was also married to Senator Malcolm Graves, a charismatic and much-admired politician who championed civil rights and social justice. Mina had double-checked her important documents earlier that morning, her driver's license, her passport, and even her official name change certificate from when she'd married Malcolm a few years ago. She always traveled prepared, given how often she was randomly selected for additional screening. Being a black woman in high-profile circles, Mina had grown weary of the side eyes and suspicious glances, but she was determined not to let them ruin her plans. As the taxi pulled up to departures, Mina gazed at the sprawling terminal. The flags of different states and countries stirred in the light breeze outside. People bustled about, dragging suitcases, greeting loved ones, or hurriedly checking flight statuses on the digital boards. She stepped out, the wheels of her carry-on clattering behind her. Her black pumps clicked smartly on the pavement as she maneuvered toward the entrance. Inside, the lines for TSA screening snaked like an endless labyrinth. Mina sighed, but she'd anticipated a crowd. After all, Dulles was a major hub. She noticed a couple of TSA officers scanning the crowd with stern faces. She put on a polite smile, determined to stay patient despite any potential delays. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Malcolm. "Good luck, honey. Let me know when you board. Love you." She quickly typed a response, trying not to grin too broadly at how sweet he could be. For all his seriousness in Congress, he never lost that gentle side with her. She tucked her phone away, confident this trip would go smoothly. Why shouldn't it? She'd done this 100 times. Still, Mina was aware of that nagging feeling that often arose when standing in a TSA line. It was the uneasy tension of being hypervisible, of being judged from the outset. It was a feeling she never mentioned to her husband or her closest friends, because, quite frankly, it upset her to even acknowledge it. She didn't want to live her life in constant fear or suspicion, so she tried to keep her mind on the positive. Eventually, Mina reached the main checkpoint area. The TSA officer who collected her driver's license was a middle-aged man with a tight-lipped expression. He glanced at her, then at the ID, and then at her again. There was a pause one Mina was all too familiar with. No matter how many times it happened, it still sent a small spike of anxiety through her. "Step this way, ma'am," the officer said. Mina complied, determined to keep calm. She had no idea that this day's journey would catapult her into one of the most nightmarish travel experiences of her life. Mina found herself ushered to a separate security lane, cordoned off by retractable belts. The officer, whose name tag read Roberts, held her ID stiffly between two fingers. At first, she assumed he was simply verifying some detail. After all, Mina's last name was Martin, but her license still bore her maiden name, hyphenated with Graves, an administrative lag she'd been too busy to rectify. Or maybe he was checking the lamination or the tiny security holograms. She was used to these extra screenings, but something in Roberts's hawk-like stare gave her a strange sense of dread. A female TSA agent joined them, scanning Mina with a handheld device. "Arms out, feet apart," she instructed. Mina followed the routine she knew so well, arms raised, voice silent, making herself as non-threatening as possible, as though existing in her own body was a potential crime. Roberts picked up a small flashlight and began examining the ID. He turned it over multiple times, as if sure there was a hidden defect. "Ma'am, how long have you had this license?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Mina brushed a few stray braids from her shoulder. "A couple of years, I believe. It's valid until 2027. He narrowed his eyes at the plastic card. "Are you sure about that?" She swallowed, keeping her tone even. "Yes, I'm sure." Roberts motioned for the female agent to hand Mina's carry-on over for a more thorough inspection. "We'll just check your bag, Miss Martin," he said, the formality of using her name not quite hiding his hostility. At that moment, Mina spotted a family of 4 whizzing through a different line. The father, who was white, gave an apologetic half-smile, as if to say, "I'm sorry this is happening to you." Mina returned a small, tense smile. This kind of unspoken acknowledgement was becoming disturbingly common. Bystanders recognized the pattern but felt powerless to intervene. The female agent rifled through Mina's neatly packed carry-on. She removed Mina's laptop, her toiletries, and an official program for the legal conference. "Are you attending a seminar?" the agent asked, flipping through the pages. "Yes, I'm a speaker at the Southeastern Legal Innovations Conference in Atlanta," Mina explained. "I'm a corporate attorney for a firm in D.C. Roberts raised his eyebrows. A corporate attorney. Interesting. It was unclear if he found it hard to believe or if he was simply trying to rattle her. Mina tried not to read too much into his tone, but it was difficult. After several minutes of rummaging, the agents found nothing suspicious. Just Mina's neatly folded clothes, a hardcover legal textbook, and her phone charger. Yet Roberts didn't seem satisfied. He handed the ID to the female agent, who stared at it critically, then back at Mina. An uneasy hush settled around them. Finally, Roberts broke the silence. "Ma'am, this ID appears to be fraudulent." Time seemed to slow. Mina's heart hammered. "Fraudulent? That's impossible. I renewed my license at the Point DC Department of Motor Vehicles last year." She even remembered the excruciatingly long line she'd waited in that day. He held up the card, pointing at some minuscule spot near the edge. "This is not the standard mark for a District of Columbia ID. We have reason to suspect it's not genuine." Mina's stomach tightened. She could almost feel the stares from travelers rushing by. "I assure you, it's completely real. You can call the DC DMV to confirm, if you like." She wanted to remain calm, but her voice quivered with frustration. "We'll have to verify your identity further, ma'am," Roberts said, slipping her ID into a small plastic bag. "Please follow me to a private screening room." As Mina followed them, her pulse pounded so fiercely in her ears that she barely registered the overhead announcements echoing through the terminal. She couldn't help but wonder if this was just routine caution or if it was something more insidious. They led Mina down a corridor away from the bustling main area of the airport. The hallway was lined with institutional grey walls and a few out-of-date travel posters. Finally, they reached a small room furnished only with a table, a couple of chairs, and a bare overhead light that cast harsh shadows. Roberts shut the door behind them. The female agent, whose name tag read Saunders, sat across from Mina. She placed the plastic bag containing Mina's license in front of her. "Ma'am, do you have any other form of identification?" Saunders asked in a clipped tone. "A passport, perhaps?" Mina nodded. "Yes, in my purse. May I retrieve it?" She tried to keep her voice steady, though her nerves were fraying. Saunders nodded, allowing Mina to open her purse. Mina produced a US passport, bright blue cover scuffed from travel over the years. She handed it over carefully. Saunders scrutinized it the way a jeweler inspects a diamond, under a loupe, checking every page, every stamp. Roberts folded his arms, looking down at Mina like he was ready to pounce on any discrepancy. Eventually, Saunders shut the passport. The passport appears legitimate, but your driver's license is highly questionable. We need to determine why. Mina exhaled slowly. I don't know what to tell you. I got that license at a legitimate DMV. It has to be real. Could it be a printing error or an older design? Roberts let out a derisive snort. We see plenty of forgeries, Miss Martin. People can purchase them online, attempt to pass them off as genuine. We're trained to spot them. Mina's temper started to rise, though she fought to keep her composure. I'm not some random scam artist. If you check your system or call the Point DCD Department of Motor Vehicles, they can confirm it's valid. I'm an attorney, and I'm traveling for business. Saunders exchanged a glance with Roberts. We will run the license number through our database, she said, picking up a clipboard, but this process can take a while. Do you have any urgent reason you need to catch this specific flight? Yes, I do, Mina snapped, her self-control slipping. I'm the keynote speaker at a major legal conference. And not that I should have to say it, but my husband is Senator Malcolm Graves. We have the same address on file. You can confirm that too. For the first time, Roberts appeared rattled. Senator Graves was a well-known figure in Washington, revered for his fiery speeches and steadfast commitment to social issues. Roberts coughed, then straightened. We'll verify everything, Miss Martin. Minutes stretched into half an hour. Mina was forced to wait in that stark room as calls were made, or so they claimed. Each time Mina tried to ask for an update, Roberts curtly told her to remain patient. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Malcolm. She glanced at Roberts, who shook his head. No calls during an active security investigation. Mina's fury surged, but she reminded herself not to provoke them. She texted Malcolm a brief message instead. TSA trouble. Might miss flight. Don't worry, I'm safe. She sent it quickly, before Roberts or Saunders could protest. The tension in the room was thick. Mina's mind spun with questions. Why are they doing this to me? Is this standard procedure? Will I miss my speech? And underneath it all, a deeper fear. Is this because I'm a black woman traveling alone? Finally, Roberts stepped outside to check on the verification process. Mina seized the moment of relative privacy to speak to Saunders, who remained behind. I don't want to cause you trouble, but I have rights. I'm not a criminal. Why are you treating me like this? Saunders's eyes flickered as though some part of her sympathized. But her training and perhaps her own prejudices kept her expression rigid. We have to ensure passenger safety and verify identities. That's our job. Mina nodded slowly, swallowing her frustration. I understand you have a job to do, but please understand how this looks from my perspective. Saunders looked away, the slightest crack in her composure suggesting she knew exactly how it looked. And yet, neither officer backed down. The clock on the drab wall read 2:15 p.m. Mina's flight was scheduled to depart at 3:00 p.m., and her frustration rose with every passing minute. Typically, airlines recommend arriving at least 2 hours early, which Mina had done. Under normal circumstances, she'd have been through security and waiting at her gate by now, perhaps sipping a coffee or reviewing her speech notes. Instead, she was trapped in this claustrophobic room, uncertain if she'd be allowed to board her flight at all. The door swung open, and Roberts entered, carrying a printout. He appeared triumphant, even smug, as if he'd caught someone in a lie. Mina's stomach flipped. What did he find? We ran the license number through our system, he announced, and the format doesn't match the standard for the year it was issued. Also, the laminate around your photo shows signs of tampering. Mina's eyes widened. That's absurd. Why would I tamper with my own license? Roberts shrugged. People do all sorts of things, Miss Martin. Sometimes they alter their ID for age or for other reasons. We're not here to speculate, only to verify. Mina felt her pulse pounding in her temples. This is a mistake. I demand you call the DCDMV directly. I'll give you whatever information they need to verify it's authentic. If you just calm down, Roberts interrupted, his tone condescending. Saunders cleared her throat, perhaps sensing Mina's mounting anger. Miss Martin, if you can't prove the authenticity of this ID, we will have to confiscate it and possibly detain you for questioning. Detain me? Mina nearly choked on the words. For what? I gave you my valid passport as backup ID. Roberts waved the passport in the air. Yes, and the passport does look legitimate, but it doesn't explain the irregularities with this license. Mina's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it. Malcolm again. She knew ignoring him wasn't an option. Please, let me speak to my husband. He's worried and he can help clarify any concerns you have. Roberts looked uncertain for a moment. The mention of Mina's high-profile spouse had clearly rattled him earlier. Perhaps he realized that if Senator Graves got involved, there could be serious repercussions for how Mina was being treated. He exchanged a look with Saunders, who gave a faint shrug. Fine, Roberts conceded. You have 2 minutes. Mina seized her phone and answered, her voice shaking. Malcolm, Mina, what's happening? You said TSA trouble. Are you all right? His voice was tense with concern. They think my driver's license is fake, Mina blurted, tears of anger threatening to spill. I showed them my passport, but they're still acting like I'm some criminal. They've got me in a private screening room, and my flight leaves in under an hour. Malcolm's voice hardened. Put me on speaker. Mina tapped the speaker function. He wants to talk to you, she said, looking directly at Roberts and Saunders. Malcolm's voice reverberated through the small room. Hello, this is Senator Malcolm Graves. Who am I speaking to? Roberts drew a sharp breath. TSA, Officer Roberts, sir. Well, Officer Roberts, Malcolm began, his tone both authoritative and controlled. I expect you to treat my wife with the same fairness and respect you'd give any passenger. She is an attorney in good standing and has no criminal record. If her driver's license has a printing error, that's a DMV issue, not a federal offense. Saunders seemed to shrink at the senator's calm but commanding tone. Roberts, for his part, stiffened. We're just following protocol, Senator. Then follow protocol fairly, Malcolm said. I'm sure you have a phone number for the DCDMV's license verification unit. Use it. I'll wait on the line while you do. Roberts looked at Saunders. She pulled out her phone and stepped into the hallway. Mina felt a small surge of relief. Maybe this ordeal would end soon. But she knew from experience that sometimes these situations only got worse before they got better. Malcolm's voice was quieter now, filled with empathy. Mina, are you okay? She let out a breath. I'm trying to be. Thank you. We'll handle this, he assured her. And if you miss that flight, we'll get you on another one. You will make that conference, no matter what it takes. Mina nodded, tears of frustration brimming in her eyes. She was grateful for Malcolm's support, but beneath the relief was a simmering anger at how unfair it was to need a senator's intervention just to prove she wasn't using a fake ID. 20 minutes later, Mina sat in the same drab room, her phone on the table in front of her. Saunders had returned, her expression noticeably more subdued than before. The phone call to the DMV had apparently gone through, but Mina's relief was tempered by the fact that she was fast running out of time to catch her flight. Roberts re-entered, still holding the plastic bag containing Mina's license. He had a new piece of paper in his hand, a fax from the DMV, it seemed. Mina waited, heart pounding for the verdict. According to the DCDMV, Roberts began, the license number belongs to Miss Mina Martin Graves and is valid. There seems to have been an anomaly in the system. However, the physical card itself has damage that could be consistent with tampering. Mina looked at him incredulously. What are you even saying? The DMV itself confirmed the license number is real. Isn't that enough? He hesitated, glancing at Saunders. It should be. However, TSA protocol states that if there's visible damage or inconsistencies in the ID, we have the right to question its authenticity. We can let you proceed with your passport, but the driver's license will be confiscated. Mina felt a fresh wave of anger. You're confiscating my license, even though the DMV confirmed it's valid. That's my property. I need it to drive. Saunders spoke up gently. You could get it replaced at the DMV once you return from your trip, ma'am. This is for security purposes. Mina wanted to argue, but she glanced at the clock. It was now 2:50 p.m. Her flight would start boarding any minute. She had little choice. With a defeated sigh, she relented. Fine. If you let me through now, just do it. Robert slid the bag and the printouts to the side, then picked up Mina's passport. You can use this to board, but we still have a few more questions. We need to document this incident properly, and we may request you come in for further questioning at a later date. Mina clenched her jaw. I'll answer your questions quickly, but I need to get to my gate. Please. They bombarded her with a series of standard inquiries. Where did she live? Where was she traveling to and why? Did she pack her own bags? Would anyone have had access to her license or personal belongings? Mina answered them all, her frustration mounting as the minutes ticked away. She tried to stay polite, but her tone grew clipped with urgency. Saunders took notes. Roberts typed something into a computer terminal. Finally, at 2:57 p.m., they handed Mina back her passport. Roberts gave a stiff nod, as if awarding her some kind of prize for endurance. You're free to go, Miss Martin. Enjoy your flight. Mina didn't dignify him with a thank you. She snatched her purse, phone, and carry-on bag and bolted out of the room. Her legs felt like they were made of lead from sitting so long, but she forced herself into a brisk walk toward the departure gates. The overhead signs felt like a maze, but she navigated them with adrenaline-fueled determination. She arrived at the gate at 3:05 p.m., panting. The digital display read, "Flight closed." The gate agent was shutting the doors to the jet bridge. Wait! Mina gasped, waving her boarding pass and passport. I'm on this flight. The agent frowned sympathetically. I'm sorry, ma'am, we've already closed the door. Federal regulations require us to close the gate at least 10 minutes before departure. We can't reopen it. Mina's shoulders sagged. All that stress, all that humiliation, and she'd missed her flight anyway. She slumped into a nearby seat, tears stinging her eyes. Her phone buzzed again. It was Malcolm, probably checking to see if she'd made it. She stared at the screen, her breath shaky. She had never felt so defeated. Yet even as tears threatened to spill, an undercurrent of anger coursed through her. She refused to let TSA's unfair treatment derail her entirely. She would find another flight, she told herself. She would make that conference. She would stand up and deliver her speech, and she would not be silenced. Not by the TSA, not by ignorance, and certainly not by injustice. Mina spent the next hour trying to sort out her travel options. The gate agent found a seat on a later flight to Atlanta, departing at 6:30 p.m. It was far from ideal. She would miss the conference's welcome dinner, but at least she could still make her keynote the following morning. She booked the ticket, then sank into a plastic chair near the gate. She scrolled through her email, letting her colleagues at the conference know she'd be arriving late. She also texted Malcolm missed flight, rebooked for 6:30, trying to stay calm. His reply was immediate. I'm so sorry, Mina. I'll do everything I can from here. In the background, Mina could hear announcements for other flights, the hustle of travelers rushing to make connections, and the occasional beep of airport carts. But her mind was elsewhere, replaying the humiliating interrogation in that small room. A swirl of anger, hurt, and outrage roiled inside her. Part of her wanted to lash out on social media, to post about what had happened. Yet she was also cautious. As the wife of a senator, any public statement she made could spiral into political headlines. She wanted to handle this carefully. Suddenly, a familiar voice broke through her thoughts. Mina, looking up, she saw Jada, one of her old law school classmates. Jada was also black, tall, and wore a sharp, business-casual suit that suggested she was traveling for work. Mina forced a smile. Jada, hey. Jada approached, brow furrowed. I thought that was you. Why are you sitting out here looking like you lost your best friend? Mina gave a short laugh, void of humor. TSA just detained me for over an hour, claimed my driver's license was fake. I missed my flight because of them. Jada shook her head in disbelief. Seriously, I'm sorry you had to deal with that nonsense. Mina shrugged, her anger flaring again at the memory. Yeah, I'm rebooked now, but it was humiliating. I mean, I showed them my passport, but they still treated me like I was a criminal. Jada sighed, taking a seat beside her. I wish I could say I'm shocked, but I'm really not. Remember that time in law school when campus police questioned me for walking across the quad at night, even though I had my ID? It's the same story, different setting. Mina nodded. I just feel so violated. And they confiscated my driver's license, even though the DMV confirmed it was legit. You know, Mina, you should probably document everything, Jada suggested. Dates, times, names. This could be grounds for a formal complaint or even legal action. You're a lawyer. You know how to build a case. Mina considered this. Yeah, I've already got notes in my phone. TSA, Officer Roberts, Officer Saunders. The time I got to the checkpoint, the time I left the private screening room, I might file a complaint. But you know how these things go. People say it's protocol and try to sweep it under the rug. Jada nodded. True, but if nothing else, it could help the next person who goes through something like this. Plus, your husband is a senator. He might be able to leverage that to get TSA to actually review their practices. Mina sighed heavily. I'm just so tired of having to prove my legitimacy at every turn. Tired of feeling singled out. But you're right, I'll do something about it. They spent the next half hour catching up, reminiscing about old times, and sharing tips on the best restaurants in Atlanta. The conversation provided a temporary balm for Mina's raw emotions. When Jada finally left to catch her own flight, Mina felt a bit more grounded, reminded that she wasn't alone in this struggle. Soon the boarding call for Mina's new flight rang through the loudspeakers. She gathered her belongings, steeling herself for another encounter with TSA agents as she re-entered the line. This time, though, the process was routine. She presented her passport, placed her bag on the conveyor belt, and passed through the scanner without incident. No extra screening, no suspicious looks. It was almost surreal how different the experience felt, like it was an entirely different universe from the one she'd been in a mere hour ago. As she settled into her seat on the plane, Mina shut her eyes and let out a long, trembling breath. She had made it, albeit later than planned, but her journey wasn't over. A fire had been lit inside her, fueling her determination to hold people accountable for their actions. There was no way she was letting this go quietly. Early the next morning in Atlanta, Mina arrived at the conference venue, a towering downtown hotel with a sleek glass facade. She was dressed impeccably in a tailored grey suit, her hair swept back into a neat bun. Exhaustion nipped at the edges of her awareness. She had arrived late, barely gotten any sleep, and still felt shaken by the airport ordeal. But as she walked through the lobby thronged with other legal professionals, her determination sharpened. She had come here for a purpose. Miss Martin Graves, called a voice from behind her. She turned to see Adriana, the conference coordinator, hurrying over with a bright smile. Thank goodness you made it. When I heard you missed your flight, I worried you wouldn't arrive in time. Mina mustered her most professional smile. I wouldn't miss it for the world, just had some unexpected issues at the airport. Adriana's brow furrowed. Oh no, I hope Everything's all right. It's handled, Mina said, leaving it at that. She didn't want to unload her frustrations on Adriana, who already had her hands full running a large conference. Adriana guided Mina to the backstage area of the main ballroom. On the dais, a large screen displayed the conference theme, Southeastern Legal Innovations Navigating the Future of Corporate Law. Rows upon rows of chairs filled the room, where attendees were already gathering. Mina felt a thrill of nerves and excitement. This was her moment after all her years of hard work. Her keynote speech revolved around diversity and inclusion in corporate law, how companies could innovate to create equitable workplaces and better community engagement. She had rehearsed it so many times she could recite it in her sleep. But now the topic felt even more personal than ever before, given the discrimination she had just faced. Taking a deep breath, Mina stepped onto the stage. Applause greeted her as she approached the podium. She glanced at the audience, a mosaic of faces, different ages, races, and backgrounds. Perhaps she could use her recent experience as an example, though she hadn't planned on it. She cleared her throat and smiled. "Good morning, everyone," she began. "I'm Mina Martin Graves, and I'm honored to speak to you today about one of the most pressing issues in our field, the intersection of corporate law, equity, and community impact." Her voice was steady, confident. Despite her fatigue, she felt a surge of adrenaline. She spoke about the importance of creating corporate structures that didn't just chase profit, but also uplifted diverse voices. She cited landmark cases, emerging legislation, and successful models of inclusive corporate governance. 15 minutes in, she paused. The crowd was attentive, nodding in agreement. She decided to share a piece of her own story, something she hadn't planned. "I was recently reminded," she began, "of how easily our systems can fail individuals and how that failure can disproportionately affect people of color. Yesterday, I was detained by airport security, accused of carrying a fake ID, even though everything I provided was valid. It wasn't until I invoked additional resources, my status as a lawyer, and the fact that my husband is a senator, that the issue was resolved, albeit with great cost to my time and dignity." A hush fell over the audience. Mina pressed on. "Not everyone has that kind of recourse. Not everyone can call a senator. Many people face these challenges every day, and without systemic change, their voices get silenced. This is why our work here matters not just to corporations, but to individuals who rely on equitable policies and fair treatment." A ripple of sympathy and applause echoed through the room. When she concluded, the crowd rose to its feet. The standing ovation wasn't just for her eloquence, but also for the courage it took to share a painful, personal incident that underscored the conference's core themes. Afterward, she stepped off the stage, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and pride. Adriana rushed up to her, grinning. "That was incredible, Mina. People are so moved. I'm getting requests for your contact information already." Mina smiled. Though her mind still lingered on the humiliation in that TSA room, she knew the real work was just beginning. Later in the day, she'd have some free time to make calls and explore the next steps in challenging TSA's behavior. Perhaps she would file a formal complaint. Perhaps Malcolm could spur a deeper investigation. Either way, Mina vowed not to remain silent. Meanwhile, back in Washington, Senator Malcolm Graves was in his Capitol Hill office, pacing. He tried to stay on top of Mina's situation while juggling his legislative responsibilities. A staffer, Melanie, peeked into his office. "Senator, you have a meeting with the Transportation Committee in 15 minutes. Malcolm nodded, glancing at his watch. "Thanks, Melanie. Could you also please get me contact info for the TSA's Internal Affairs Office, and maybe a direct line to Administrator David Pekoski's office?" "Sure thing," Melanie replied, stepping away. Malcolm took a seat at his desk and opened his laptop. He wanted to be strategic about how he approached this. As a senator, he had the influence to demand accountability from federal agencies, But he also knew that stepping in too aggressively could backfire or be perceived as a personal vendetta. Still, Mina's ordeal highlighted a problem he'd long been aware of: systemic biases that could turn a routine airport visit into a nightmare for travelers of color. He thought back to Mina's trembling voice on the phone. She was always so composed, so determined, yet in that moment she'd sounded fragile. It infuriated him. If Mina, with all her credentials and connections, had been treated this way, what about people without those advantages? 15 minutes later, Malcolm strolled into the meeting with the Transportation Committee. It was a small, closed-door session about infrastructure funding, but the TSA administrator, David Pekoski, happened to be there for a separate briefing. Malcolm bided his time, waiting until the session ended and the room began to clear. Catching Pekoski's eye, Malcolm beckoned him over. "Administrator Pekoski, could we have a quick word?" Pekoski, a tall man with a firm handshake, nodded. "Of course, Senator Graves." Malcolm explained what had happened to Mina at Dulles, the accusations, the detainment, the confiscated license despite DMV verification. Pekoski listened carefully, a crease forming on his brow. "That's concerning," he said. "I'm sorry your wife experienced that. We have protocols, of course, but it sounds like something went wrong." Malcolm appreciated the apology, but wanted more than words. "I understand the need for security, sir, but you know as well as I do that people of color are disproportionately selected for these extra screenings. I'd like to see a formal investigation into the conduct of those officers." Pekoski nodded. "I'll look into it. Please provide me with all the details, dates, times, officer names if possible. We take allegations of misconduct seriously." Malcolm handed over a folder Melanie had prepared. "Everything's in here. I'll review it personally," Pekoski promised, tucking the folder under his arm. "We want to ensure that TSA protocols are followed correctly, and that includes not discriminating against travelers." Satisfied, but not wholly convinced, Malcolm thanked him. As Pekoski left, Malcolm felt a measure of relief. At least the head of the TSA was aware and had pledged to investigate. Whether that would lead to real change remained to be seen. Stepping out into the hallway, Malcolm dialed Mina's number. When she answered, he could hear a subtle hum of conversation in the background, likely the conference's midday break. "I spoke with TSA's administrator," he told her, relaying the conversation. "That's good," Mina replied, though her voice carried a hint of weariness. "We'll see how seriously they take it." "We'll push them as hard as we need to," Malcolm said gently, "but focus on your conference for now. You're doing important work, and I'm proud of you." A soft laugh escaped Mina. "Thanks. I appreciate everything you're doing, Malcolm." They ended the call, each feeling a small spark of hope that the TSA might be held accountable. Neither of them, however, knew just how twisted this saga would become, nor the magnitude of the repercussions that were about to unfold. The following week, Mina returned to D.C., still reeling from the whirlwind of events. The conference had been a success. Her speech garnered rave reviews, and she'd made valuable connections with other corporate attorneys and activists. Yet the sting of her TSA encounter lingered. The feeling of being powerless in that private screening room, the condescending tone of Officer Roberts, the way they had dismissed her valid license, it haunted her thoughts. Back at her law firm, Mina sat in her corner office, reviewing documents for a major corporate merger. Despite her best efforts, she found it hard to concentrate. Her colleague, Sharon, popped in with a concerned smile. "Hey, I heard about what happened at the airport. Are you okay?" Mina nodded slowly. "I'm fine physically, just angry." Malcolm talked to the TSA administrator, so they're supposed to investigate, but who knows if they'll do anything. Sharon leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You know, Mina, we could consider filing a lawsuit, something along the lines of civil rights violations. There's precedence for that." Mina sighed. "I've thought about it." But lawsuits are time-consuming, and the TSA often hides behind broad security measures. It might take years to resolve, and the personal toll, her voice trailed off. She was already juggling a demanding career and supporting Malcolm's political endeavors. "I get it," Sharon said, "but if you need support, we've got your back. You're not just a colleague here. You're one of our top attorneys, and what they did was unacceptable." Touched, Mina thanked her. She knew she had allies in her firm, people who took civil rights seriously. As Sharon left, Mina's phone buzzed. It was a call from an unknown number. "Hello?" A hesitant voice on the other end. "Is this Miss Mina Martin Graves? My name is Sarah Whitmore. I was a TSA agent at Dulles the day you were detained." Mina sat upright, her heart quickening. "You were there?" "Yes, ma'am," the woman replied quietly. I saw what happened with Officer Roberts and Officer Saunders. I'm not proud of how things went down. I've been losing sleep over it." Mina took a deep breath. "Why are you calling me Miss Whitmore?" Sarah hesitated. "I overheard Roberts and Saunders talking after you left. They joked about how they gave you a hard time, saying they wanted to see how far they could push before you snapped. Roberts even bragged about confiscating your ID just to teach you a lesson. I felt sick. I wanted to come forward sooner, but I was scared of retaliation." Mina's hands shook, so it hadn't just been a misunderstanding or overzealous protocol. It was deliberate harassment. She took a moment to steady herself. "Thank you for telling me this. Are you willing to go on record?" "I'm willing, but I'm scared," Sarah admitted. "Roberts has been with TSA for years. Saunders too. But I can't keep silent. If someone investigates, I'll testify." Mina's mind raced. If Sarah's testimony could be formally documented, it would be a bombshell in any investigation. "Listen, I understand your fear, but your statement could make a huge difference. Let me talk to my husband and a couple of attorneys. We can ensure you have legal protections as a whistleblower." Sarah sounded relieved. "Thank you, Miss Martin Graves. Thank you for hearing me out." As the call ended, Mina pressed a hand to her forehead. This changed everything. No longer was it just Mina's word against TSA protocol. There was a potential witness who could corroborate the malicious intent. Mina felt a surge of righteous anger. Maybe she had been hesitant to wage a legal battle before, but this new information lit a fire under her. They were the ones who had crossed the line, abusing their positions of power, and Mina was done letting them get away with it. That evening, Mina and Malcolm sat in their living room, the remains of a simple dinner strewn across the coffee table. Malcolm had changed into a casual sweater and jeans, his serious demeanor contrasting with the comfortable setting. Mina paced back and forth, rehashing the conversation with Sarah Whitmore. "This is huge," Mina stressed, arms folded protectively over her torso. An actual TSA insider admitting it was intentional harassment, that they wanted to teach me a lesson. For what? Being a black woman with a successful career and a senator husband? Malcolm's jaw tightened. "We need to take this to the next level. With Sarah's testimony, we can build a strong complaint or lawsuit, and I can push for a formal Senate inquiry into TSA harassment practices." Mina plopped onto the couch, exhaustion mingling with determination. "I'm worried about Sarah, though. She seemed afraid." Malcolm nodded. "Whistleblower protections exist, but the TSA's bureaucracy can be harsh. We can't guarantee there won't be consequences for her. We'd have to keep her identity confidential as long as possible. Maybe file an anonymous tip first." They talked late into the night, strategizing. Mina knew she had to carefully weigh the risks. A public lawsuit could invite scrutiny, and her personal life would become tabloid fodder. But if she did nothing, officers like Roberts and Saunders would keep trampling on people's rights. The next day, Mina arranged a virtual meeting with Sarah Whitmore, along with Mina's firm partner, Kevin Miller, a seasoned litigator known for handling civil rights cases. Kevin explained potential legal avenues. One, formal TSA complaint. Sarah could provide a statement, Mina could attach her own account, and they'd demand an internal investigation. Two, lawsuit alleging civil rights violations. Mina could sue the TSA under the premise of racial profiling and harassment, using Sarah's testimony as evidence of intent. 3. Senate inquiry. Malcolm could lead or support an inquiry in the Senate, potentially shining a national spotlight on the issue. Sarah listened intently. She sounded nervous, but resolute. "I'll do what's right. I can't keep working with those people, knowing how they treated Miss Martin Graves. It's not just unethical, it's cruel." After the call, Mina felt more determined than ever. She found herself at an unexpected intersection of her personal and professional lives. The case would require her legal expertise, her political savvy as a senator's wife, and her moral conviction. The next week was a blur of paperwork. Kevin helped draft a detailed complaint, and Mina provided all the evidence: dates, times, names, the phone records showing her attempts to call Malcolm, the confirmation from the DC, DMV, and Sarah's testimony. They compiled a robust dossier and sent it to TSA's Office of Inspection, which handles internal investigations. Simultaneously, Malcolm prepared a memo for members of the Senate Subcommittee on Transportation and Security, outlining the incident and calling for a broader investigation into TSA practices at major airports nationwide. In the midst of this frenzy, Mina's phone rang again, this time from an unknown, blocked number. When she answered, the voice on the other end sent a chill through her. "You're playing a dangerous game," it said. Then the line went dead. Mina stood there, her hand trembling. She'd expected pushback, but this felt like a threat. She immediately told Malcolm, who insisted they report it to Capitol Police. The fear gnawed at her, yet it only strengthened her resolve. The more they tried to silence her, the more determined she became to stand up. Something was rotten within that branch of the TSA, and she was no longer content to merely grumble about it. She was pushing back with every tool at her disposal. A few weeks later, the storm clouds began to gather for TSA officers Roberts and Saunders. TSA's Office of Inspection launched an official internal inquiry. Sarah Whitmore, with the help of whistleblower protections, provided a detailed affidavit recounting the conversation she had overheard. She even named other co-workers who had boasted about putting certain passengers in their place. The evidence mounted. Mina watched the developments with a mix of satisfaction and anxiety. Her name was now tied to a high-profile case accusing TSA officers of racial profiling and abuse of power. The media started sniffing around. A Washington Post journalist contacted her for a comment, referencing a leaked memo about unjust detentions at Dulles. Mina and Kevin agreed to provide a neutral statement, emphasizing that they welcomed a thorough investigation and hoped for a fair resolution. Behind closed doors, Mina was steeling herself for the possibility of testifying in front of a Senate subcommittee. Malcolm hinted that some senators from both parties were taking the allegations seriously, as TSA misconduct had become a bipartisan concern. Mina prepared her statement, determined to remain poised if called upon. Then, one morning, Mina's email pinged with a notification from Kevin, update on TSA inquiry. She opened it to find that the Office of Inspection had completed a preliminary review. Roberts and Saunders were placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. The report stated that sufficient evidence exists to warrant disciplinary action. Mina felt a jolt of triumph, but also a pang of empathy. Losing their jobs might be harsh, yet they had crossed a moral line. She reminded herself that accountability was necessary for systemic change. 2 days later, Mina received another unexpected message, this time from Roberts himself. The email read, Miss Martin Graves, you've ruined my career and my life. I can't believe you go to such lengths over a simple ID check. We were just doing our jobs, but you and your senator husband twisted it into something it wasn't. I hope you're satisfied." Officer Roberts Mina's initial reaction was shock, quickly followed by anger. She wanted to reply, "It wasn't just an ID check. You deliberately humiliated me and boasted about it." But Kevin advised her not to respond directly. Instead, he forwarded the email to the TSA's Office of Inspection. If Roberts was contacting Mina in an attempt to intimidate or harass her, that too should be part of the record. While Mina knew she had the moral high ground, the weight of the situation pressed on her. She feared a potential public backlash, especially from those who believed that any critique of TSA procedures compromised national security. Social media posts surfaced, some hailing Mina as a hero for taking a stand, others calling her a privileged senator's wife, trying to get special treatment. The commentary stung, but Mina tried to focus on her goal, ensuring no one else suffered the same abuse she had. Then came the hearing. The Senate Subcommittee on Transportation and Security scheduled a formal session to address the rising complaints against TSA. Malcolm was not on the subcommittee, but he planned to attend as an observer. Mina, meanwhile, was invited to testify as a witness to the alleged misconduct. Alongside her would be a few other travelers with similar stories, and, crucially, Sarah Whitmore under a sealed identity arrangement. The stage was set for a major showdown, one that could reshape TSA policy or at least shake it to its core. Mina could feel the magnitude of this moment in her bones. As she prepared her statement, she thought about every person who had ever been singled out, humiliated, or stripped of their dignity in the name of security. She promised herself she would speak for all of them, not just for herself. The day of the Senate hearing arrived, a crisp morning with the Capitol dome gleaming under the pale autumn sun. Mina entered the hearing room with her head held high. Malcolm walked beside her, offering silent support. Rows of seats for spectators, media, and staffers filled the space. At the front was a long table where Mina and the other witnesses would sit. The senators, like an imposing panel of judges, faced them. Cameras flashed as Mina took her seat. A hush fell over the room when the subcommittee chair, Senator Anderson, called the hearing to order. "We're here to address ongoing concerns about TSA practices, including allegations of racial profiling and undue harassment of passengers," he stated firmly. One by one, the witnesses shared their experiences. A young Latino man recounted how he'd been detained for suspicious behavior because he was wearing a hoodie and carrying a gaming console. An elderly Asian woman described a humiliating pat-down that left her in tears. Then it was Mina's turn. She rose, took the oath, and began her testimony. She recounted every detail, the suspicious glares, the confiscation of her ID despite DMV confirmation, the mocking conversation revealed by Sarah Whitmore, and the email from Robert. She kept her tone steady, unwavering, even as a lump of emotion gathered in her throat. "I am not here to demonize all TSA officers," she concluded, her voice resonating in the silent chamber. "But a toxic culture exists within certain corners of this agency. We must root it out. Travelers should be able to trust that security procedures will be fair and unbiased." That day, I was not treated fairly. And if it can happen to me, an attorney and the wife of a senator, it can happen to anyone. A murmur of agreement rippled through the spectators. Senator Anderson thanked her and invited questions from the panel. Some senators praised her courage. A few asked probing questions about how to balance security with civil liberties. Mina answered them all, leaning on her legal expertise. When Sarah Whitmore testified under partial anonymity, her face obscured to media cameras, she shared the conversation she overheard between Roberts and Saunders. Gasps filled the room. One senator, outraged, declared, "This is exactly what we must prevent." Racial bias and power tripping cannot be tolerated in our federal agencies. After the hearing ended, Mina stepped outside to a throng of reporters shouting her name. She felt dazed, as though she'd just run a marathon. Malcolm placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Cameras flashed, microphones loomed, but Mina offered only a brief statement: "We've taken a step toward justice. Now, the authorities must ensure real changes follow." In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift. Roberts resigned amid public scrutiny, while Saunders faced demotion and mandatory diversity training. TSA Administrator Pekoske publicly committed to rolling out new anti-bias training and stricter guidelines for handling IDs. An internal audit was launched to review past complaints of discriminatory conduct. Mina's case became a catalyst for an overdue reckoning, and karma, in its own way, completed the cycle. Publicly disgraced, Roberts tried to claim he was being scapegoated, but few believed him after Sarah's testimony. The final blow came when Mina's confiscated license was returned along with a formal apology from TSA's legal counsel. For Mina, the journey had been harrowing. Yet she felt an unshakable sense of purpose. She'd stood up for herself and, in doing so, for countless others who had suffered in silence. In a world rife with injustice, this small victory mattered. And she intended to keep fighting both in the courtroom and beyond until the system that harassed her was made fair for all. Thank you for joining us on this dramatic journey where one woman's resilience and the unwavering support of her senator husband shook a flawed system to its core. We watched Mina face humiliation and accusation, only to rise stronger and more determined than ever. From that cramped TSA screening room to the halls of the United States Senate, this story reminds us that speaking truth to power can spark real change. We hope Mina's fight inspires you to stand up against injustice, wherever you find it. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button to show your support. Don't forget to share it with friends who value powerful storytelling. And if you want more gripping dramas, real-life tales, and thought-provoking content, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Stay tuned for our next big story, and thank you for watching.